Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show.
Cup of Joe Wrestling Show?
With Joey Harris. A podcast for the wrestling fan on the go. So take your favorite beverage of choice and join Joey as he takes a look at some of the biggest shows on the WWE Network.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show. I am your host, Joey Harris. This is the podcast for the wrestling fan on the go. So take your favorite beverage of choice as we look at some of the biggest shows on the WWE Network. Today we conclude our look at the AWA by looking at SuperClash 4. SuperClash 4 took place on April the 8th, 1990 from the St. Paul Civic Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. There were 2,000 people in attendance. This is a hidden gem on the WWE Network. It is a one-camera setup with no traditional commentary. The national anthem plays. An announcement is then made that there is no smoking in the auditorium. People are upset, but the announcer is like, "Hey, don't be mad at me. I'm just announcing this." They then announce that the Junkyard Dog tore a ligament the night before in his knee. They announced Verne Gagne as his replacement to a nice pop. Jake Milliman versus Todd Becker. Becker with the early advantage. Crowd cheers a Milliman comeback. He works Becker's arm. He gets the monkey flip, then an arm bar. Becker comes back with a slam and a headlock. He gets a 2 count. Milliman wins with a sunset flip. The Texas Hangman versus DJ Peterson and Brad Rheingans. Too much stalling by the Texas Hangmen before they even lock up. The Hangmen are Frank Veazey, better known by the ring name Bull Payne, Rick Gantner and Saito, and Tom Benninghouse, better known as Killer. Rheingans start. They finally lock up. Rheingans choking Psycho in the corner. Psycho comes back with a cheap shot. Back and forth. Rheingans with a hip toss and an arm drag. Killer tagged in. Then Peterson also tagged in. He works an arm hold. The faces do a couple of phantom tag spots. Rheingans with an arm bar. Hangman cheat to gain an advantage. Fans making noises, but that dies down. Rheingans ducks as Psycho comes off the top rope and he clotheslines Killer. Peterson tagged in and he cleans house. He gets a 2 count on a power slam. Double clothesline. Really annoying fans near the camera mic. The Hangmen get the win with an inside cradle. Baron von Raschke versus Colonel De Beers. The Baron with an early advantage, so De Beers bails out. They exchange wrist locks. Von Raschke gets an armbar. De Beers comes back with a headlock. Von Raschke threatens the claw, so De Beers falls out of the ring to avoid it. Both are past their primes, but could get away with it in this crowd. Sheik Adnan Al-KC has come down for De Beers. De Beers goes up top, but gets caught by Von Raschke and slammed off. De Beers comes back and batters Von Raschke in the far corner. De Beers goes off the top rope with a headbutt, but Von Raschke moves. Von Raschke comes back, hits a knee off of an Irish whip. The fans yell for the claw. De Beers tangled up in the ropes. Von Raschke signals for the claw. Al-KC blocks it with his briefcase, so Von Raschke goes after him. He gets the claw on Al-KC, but De Beers attacks him from behind. They fight outside, but Von Raschke makes it back in before the count and wins by countout. De Beers and Al-KC attack him after the match. Tommy Jammer versus Tully Blanchard with Christopher Love. This is where Blanchard lands after he gets fired from the WWF and can't go to WCW because the offer that he had received was rescinded from WCW. After it is leaked that Blanchard has failed a drug test in the WWF. Christopher Love is longtime wrestling guy Burt Prentice, who made a name for himself in Memphis and Nashville. It takes time to start after they both get in. Starts and stops with some clean breaks and stalling by Blanchard. He goes out and Jammer drags him back in over the top rope. Blanchard keeps getting to the ropes and stalling. Jammer is clumsy, but Blanchard is trying to make him look good. Jammer with an armbar. Blanchard again gets to the ropes. Jammer pulls him back and Love grabs his legs. and it's a tug of war between Love and Jammer with Blanchard as the rope. Then it's the rest hold by Jammer. Blanchard gets to the rope games over and over again. They announce 5 minutes have gone by in the match, and it feels like 15. More of the same. Jammer with a hip toss into an armbar. A minor "Go Tully Go" chant goes up, and Blanchard gets a thumb to Jammer's eye. He throws Jammer out. Jammer gets back in and goes back to the armbar. Blanchard with several pin attempts. Jammer with his own thumb to Blanchard's eye, and Blanchard rolls out. Back in, Blanchard throws Jammer out, and Love kicks him. Back in, Jammer gets a knee up at a Blanchard charge. Jammer with an abdominal stretch. Blanchard outside on the apron, and Jammer suplexes him in, and they do the Warrior Rick Rude spot from WrestleMania 5, with Love playing the Bobby Heenan role of grabbing Jammer's leg so he can't kick out, except it isn't as good as the WrestleMania 5 spot. Blanchard gets the win. Jammer goes after Love, and Blanchard attacks him. They brawl into the crowd, and Blanchard attacks Jammer with a chair. Intermission. Coquina Maximus with Sheik Adnan Al-KC versus John Nord. Lumberjack match. Adnan has a bounty on Nord that Coquina is trying to collect. Coquina is the future Yokozuna here, taking on the future Berserker. This takes forever to get started. Shoving to start. Test of strength. Coquina knocked outside, and the Lumberjacks gently help him back in. Lumberjacks are most of the wrestlers that we have seen already. Nord is trying to knock Coquina off his feet. He finally does it. Coquina knocked out again and put back in. Coquina with a nerve hold on. He has it on for several minutes. Nord coming back. Nord goes out, and there's a scuffle trying to get him back in. Coquina goes back on the offensive. The crowd and some of the Lumberjacks try to rally Nord. Coquina misses a corner charge. Nord hits a big boot. Adnan grabs Nord's leg, and the Lumberjacks throw him in. Nord gets Adnan in the corner, and Coquina goes to the corner charge and hits Adnan. Nord opens up Adnan's briefcase and hits Coquina with it. Paper flies everywhere, proving that Adnan didn't have the money in the case to pay Coquina the bounty. Nord pins Coquina. Coquina and Adnan start arguing, and Coquina punches Adnan into a big pop. He then splashes Adnan. A Coquina chant goes out. AWA World Heavyweight Championship match. Mr. Saito versus Larry Zbyszko. Some dignitaries, including Verne Gagne, are introduced, and they call Verne wrestling's greatest legend, and how people would love to see him come out of retirement one more time. He does get a nice ovation. Nick Bockwinkel is announced as special guest referee. They start out slow. Saito on the offensive. Zbyszko is frustrated, but doesn't take Saito down. Rope break. Zbyszko with an armbar. They slug it out, and Zbyszko goes down. Saito choking Zbyszko, and Bockwinkel breaks it up. And Bockwinkel then threatens Saito when Saito comes after him. Saito gets a sleeper on. Zbyszko gets to his feet. He gets out of it, but Saito gets it back on. He gets out again and kicks Saito down. Zbyszko then choking Saito, and he and Bockwinkel start going at it. Zbyszko with an abdominal stretch. Back and forth. Zbyszko running Saito's head into the corner. Saito chopping Zbyszko, who falls out. Saito runs Zbyszko into the corner. Zbyszko with a sunset flip for a 2 count. Saito misses the charge. Saito gets the Scorpion Deathlock on Zbyszko. Zbyszko gets to the ropes. Saito going after Zbyszko hard. Saito with an inside cradle for a 2 count. A big suplex gets 2. They both get knocked down. Back up. Saito gets another suplex and a double pin where both men's shoulders are on the mat, but Zbyszko gets his shoulder up at the last second. Saito thinks he has won and is announced as the winner, but Bockwinkel raises Zbyszko's hand. Saito argues with Bockwinkel. The crowd is bewildered too. A Larry chant goes out. Zbyszko is awarded the belt. Saito then attacks him. Kathy Gagne explains the ruling to a smattering of boos and applause. Intermission while they set up the cage. Cage match. The Destruction Crew, Wayne Bloom and Mike Enos, with Tully Blanchard versus Paul Diamond and the Trooper. Bob Lurtsema is the special guest referee. They finally get in. All 4 brawl. Faces in control. They run Enos into the cage. He's bumping and bleeding for the business. Faces doing quick tags. Can't get the 3 count though. Bloom tagged in and makes a small comeback. Tries to climb out of the top of the cage. The Trooper brings him back in. Trooper misses a top rope elbow drop. The heels take over. Gets a 2 count. Blanchard holds a chair against the cage and they run the Trooper into it. The heels are double teaming. The Trooper runs into the cage. He's now bleeding. More double teaming. The Destruction Crew throw Lurtsema towards the door to a mild pop. They do the Doomsday Device on the Trooper. Lurtsema throws Bloom aside and does a leg drop on Enos and puts the Trooper on him and counts the pin. The Destruction Crew and Blanchard then attack Lurtsema in the cage and Blanchard locks them in. The faces try to get in and Blanchard keeps them away. They finally get in and the heels retreat. Outtakes and highlights of Eric Bischoff's interviews with the participants. Mr. Saito and his manager Hitori say they are disappointed in Nick Bockwinkel and America. Colonel De Beers talks about the bounty on John Nord and the suitcase of shredded paper. De Beers says Sheikh Adnan Al-KC isn't taking advantage of anyone and that the thieving Americans took the money. Outtakes of Colonel De Beers cutting a promo. Bischoff is then shown with Nick Bockwinkel, who explains his decision. Bockwinkel is just the greatest here. Bischoff with Larry Zbyszko, and Larry is gloating over his win. Bockwinkel has the Holy Grail, and Larry is the champion. Bischoff is then shown with the Destruction Crew. They say they are still the champions. Lurtsema saved the faces, and he better stop hiding. Tully Blanchard comes in and talks about Lurtsema interfering. Then Blanchard and Christopher Love talk about Lurtsema. Bischoff then talks to Lurtsema. He says he was right to get involved. Then outtakes and highlights of Eric Bischoff talking to the Trooper about the cage match. For the fate of the AWA, let's turn to Wikipedia. Despite falling behind the WWF and the NWA as a major promotion throughout 1986 and 1987, Gagne still managed to find and or develop legitimate young talent like Scott Hall, the Midnight Rockers Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, Bull Power Leon White, later known as Big Van Vader, the Nasty Boys Brian Knobbs and Jerry Saggs, and Medusa Michelli during that time frame. The SuperClash 2 Championship debate. After further review by on-air President Stanley Blackburn and following weeks of speculation by AWA fans, the decision was upheld and Hennig was the new champion. Gagne pushed Hennig and the Midnight Rockers throughout 1987 and into 1988, but the WWF came calling and all 3 of his top stars would soon be gone. During 1987, in an attempt to remain relevant and survive, Gagne renewed a relationship with Memphis-based promoter Jerry Jarrett and the CWA, and even allowed Mid-Southern Territory legend Jerry the King Lawler to win the AWA World title from Curt Hennig in May of 1988. This was after the AWA flirted for months with the idea of giving Greg Gagne the belt, even awarding the belt to Gagne at a couple of house shows, only to return it to Hennig on a technicality. It was widely speculated that the idea of the younger Gagne as heavyweight champion did not play well with AWA fans, who seemed more interested in the involvement of Verne Gagne and Larry Hennig in the feud than they did with Greg Gagne actually winning the title. So Verne decided to go with Lawler instead. Michaels and Jannetty would drop the titles to Bad Company around the same time. Facing financial trouble on their own, World Class Championship Wrestling then allied themselves with the AWA and the CWA, and Jerry Lawler would challenge World Class Championship Wrestling heavyweight champion Kerry Von Erich to a title unification match at SuperClash 3 in December. SuperClash 3 was the AWA's first venture into pay-per-view and wrestling's first collaborative pay-per-view between several promotions. However, after months of hype, the end results were somewhat contentious and relatively unsuccessful. Following the event, the collaborative effort was over. Lawler was stripped of the title in January 1989. Lawler kept the AWA title belt and continued promoting himself in Tennessee, Texas, and on the independent circuit as the unified world heavyweight champion. Lawler did this in an attempt to leverage pay-per-view revenue from Gagne that was owed to him, but Gagne never paid him and eventually commissioned a new title belt of similar design. In February 1989, Larry Zbyszko, a one-time employee and Verne's son-in-law, returned to the AWA and won the vacated world title in an 18-man battle royal, eliminating Tom Zink to end the match. It was also during this time that Joe Blanchard replaced Stanley Blackburn as AWA president. Zbyszko's first title reign would last for a little over 1 year. During this time, he would defend the title against Zink, Greg Gagne, Wahoo McDaniel, Ken Patera, Nikita Koloff, Brad Rangans, The Trooper, Dale Wilkes, and Masa Saito. Zbyszko would eventually lose the title to Saito in February 1990 in front of 65,000 fans at the Tokyo Dome at the New Japan All Japan Pro Wrestling Super Show. Zbyszko would regain the title in May 1990 at SuperClash 4. During 1989 and 1990, the AWA also pushed Mike Enos and Wayne Bloom as the top tag team. In early 1989, Eric Bischoff, who was performing office work for the AWA at the time, mostly in sales and syndication, was placed in front of the camera to replace Larry Nelson as interviewer and occasional commentator. The AWA was Bischoff's first exposure to the world of pro wrestling. He would later become a dominant force in the industry, leading World Championship Wrestling to prominence in the 1990s. The AWA would become inactive in the fall of 1990. The last television taping occurred on August the 11th. As a result, Zbyszko signed with WCW. As his last official act, Verne Gagne stripped the already departed Zbyszko of the AWA World title in December 1990. In 1991, Gagne and his inactive promotion officially filed for bankruptcy. Gagne did promote 2 cards in Minnesota in May 1991, featuring the return of Greg Gagne and Wahoo McDaniel, and other stars such as Baron von Raschke, Buck Zumhoff, and the Destruction Crew, Mike Enos and Wayne Bloom, but he was unable to revive the promotion. Despite this, the AWA continued rerunning matches in their weekly ESPN time slot and on their syndicated All-Star Wrestling show. The company also managed to release a commercial tape, Hulk Hogan's Highlights, during 1991. On the Spectacular Legacy of the AWA DVD, Eric Bischoff revealed that one of the main reasons the AWA shut down was that Verne Gagne was leveraging money against a valuable property he owned along Lake Minnetonka. Local officials wanted to turn the property into a park. Gagne fought the decision for several years, but eventually lost the eminent domain case, leading to the creation of Lake Minnetonka Regional Park. As a result, he lost the financial resources he was using to keep the AWA up and running, and had no choice but to shut down the promotion. In an interview during the late 1990s with Minneapolis television station KARE, Gagne spoke of the devoted fan base in Minnesota and joked about how he may promote again someday, but nothing ever materialized. Gagne died in 2015. There are a number of ways that you can contact me. You can follow the show's Twitter at Cup of Joe Pod. You can email the show at cupofjoewrestlingshow@gmail.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at @LeeJoeyHarris. Thank you for joining me this week. Folks, stay safe, stay healthy, and remain optimistic. This is Joey Harris saying so long from Stately, Maine Manor.
The Cup of Joe Wrestling Show is a production of Baby Kangaroo Media.